2 haraka, 4 haraka, 6 haraka. What is a haraka? How long is the actual length of a haraka? Where is it coming from? What's this haraka? 2, 4, 6. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this video, we'll talk just about that. What is a haraka? Where does it come from? How long is it? And what does that have to do with the speeds of recitation? So stick around to the end. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In terms of learning objectives and what you should be able to get out from this video, number 1, you should be able to analyze the length of a letter that has a harakah or a vowel. Number 2, you should be able to understand the measure used for the length of a mad. And number 3, you should be able to differentiate different speeds of recitation. Now let's first answer the question. How long should it take me to pronounce a letter that has a vowel? And if that vowel or haraka is a fatha or a kasra or a dhamma, how long should that take me? Well, the answer is it should take you the same for any letter with a vowel if it has a fatha, kasra or dhamma. If you say kutiba, kutiba, the length of time it takes to say ku should be the same exact time as ti, as ba. Kutiba. So they are all consistent. Or ya'idukum, ya'idukum. So ya'iduku. All these 4 letters, ya'iduku. The length of time it takes you to pronounce each one should be the same. So it's consistent. A letter which has a fatha or dhamma or kasra, same length. So let's go back to kutiba. Now if I said kutiba, kutiba, I extended the dhamma on the kaf, you can tell now, no, that dhamma was too long. Kutiba was too long. Or kutiba, kutiba, no, that length of the kasra there was incorrect. Why? Because it should be consistent. Kutiba, the length of each one should be the same. So the time it takes to pronounce a letter with a haraka is the same irrespective of the haraka. So any letter with any haraka should take the same amount of time to pronounce. Now let's answer the second question. What is the length of mad? When we say 2 haraka, 4 haraka, 6 haraka, what does that actually mean? Is it 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds? Or is it 2 finger movements, 4 finger movements? Well, actually, let's see. So if we said finger movements, if we said 4 finger movements, if I was angry or excited, I'd be doing them really quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I was relaxed after a cup of coffee, I'd be doing 1, 2, 3, 4. So movement of the fingers, that's not quite accurate. What about seconds? Is it the length? Is it 4 seconds? Well, not either. So what is a harakah when it comes to mad when we say 2, 4 and 6? Well, a harakah is the time it takes to pronounce a letter with a harakah. So when we said kutiba, kutiba, so ku, that the length of time it took us to pronounce ku, that's 1 harakah. Ti, that's 1 harakah. Ba, that's 1 harakah. So that took us kutiba, 3 harakas. So we have this measuring stick or gauge to understand how long a mad should be. So when we say something should take 2 harakas or 2 counts, that means it should take the same amount of time to pronounce ba ba. Ba is 1 haraka, ba is another haraka. So ba ba, that's 2 harakas. So when we say ba, ba ba, ba, ba ba, ba, the length of time I say ba should be the same as ba ba, or bibi, or boo boo, because as we said, fatha, dhamma, kasra should take the same amount of time. So a haraka is the length of time it takes us to pronounce a letter with a haraka. It's not fingers, it's not seconds. It's the length of time it takes us to pronounce a letter with a haraka, either with a fatha or a kasra or a dhamma. They should all be the same length. Now, how is that important? Well, it helps us understand speeds of recitation. So what are the speeds of recitation? Generally speaking, we can read at 3 different speeds or pace when we recite. We can read really slowly, and we call that tahqiq, or we can read at a medium pace, and we call that tadwir, or we can read quickly, and we call that hadr. So if I read with hadr, I would say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And if I read with tadwir or a moderate speed, I would be reading it Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And if I read slowly with tahqiq, I would read it Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. An important point to note here is that with all 3 speeds of recitation, we're still applying the rules of Tajweed to all of them. However, it's of relative length to the pace that you are reciting at. So when you're reciting slower, relatively speaking, all the Tajweed rules are slower or take longer, while if you're reading faster, relatively all the Tajweed rulings are faster. But how do we know the correct length of a ruling? Well, we use this measuring stick, this gauge, and your gauge is the harakah, which is how long did it take me to pronounce a letter with a harakah within that speed. So when I said alhamdu, do, that's a harakah. So if I'm reading quickly, do, that will be the one harakah that will define, okay, that then based on that, I know what 2 haraka is, what 4 haraka is, and what 6 haraka is. If I'm reading slower and I'm saying alhamdu, so if I'm do, that's the length of my haraka. So we can extract a measuring stick or a gauge from our own recitation. However long it takes us to pronounce a letter with a haraka, that's the gauge that we will use for mudud and so on. And an important point is we shouldn't be changing the pace midway through recitation, because then everything changes and it's not consistent. So we shouldn't be saying Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. I've just gone from quick to slow to quick now. Well, things aren't consistent anymore. My alif here and alif here are not the same. The length of the letter here and letter here are not the same. While when we read, things should be consistent within that recitation. And as Al-Imam Ibn al-Jazari says, وَاللَّفْظُ فِي نَظِيرِهِ كَمِثْلِهِ. Pronouncing one letter here or there should be consistent and similar. And in the next videos, we'll talk about mad and which one should be 2, which one should be 4, which one should be 6. But the key here to take away is that the measuring stick, or the 2 and 4 and 6, that gauge is extracted from our own recitation based on the length it takes us to pronounce a letter with a haraka. So when we say a certain mad should be 4 haraka, well, that 4 haraka should sound longer when we're reading slowly with tahqiq. So that 4 haraka during tahqiq or slow reading would sound longer than 4 haraka in a moderate recitation pace, and that would sound longer than 4 haraka in the quicker pace. So a 4 haraka slow is going to take longer than 4 haraka at a medium pace. Will take longer than 4 haraka at a quick pace, because the haraka is extracted from the pace of recitation itself. And now we know why the fingers isn't quite accurate, neither is the seconds when you talk about harakat. But haraka is the speed it takes to pronounce a letter with a haraka. So let's revisit those learning objectives. Number 1, we wanted to analyze how long it takes us to pronounce a letter with a haraka, and we said kutiba, dhamma, kasra, fatha, any letter with a haraka should take the same amount of time. Number 2 is we now understand what is the measure or the measuring stick or the gauge for mad, and that is a haraka. And where is that haraka extracted from, or that gauge extracted from? It's from the speed of our recitation. And number 3, what are the 3 speeds of recitation? There's slow, tahqiq, moderate, tadwir, or faster, which is hadr. And in all three, rules of tajweed apply relative to how quickly you are reading. I'll see you in the next video when we talk more about mudud. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.